Hello and welcome to episode 5 of season 2 of this podcast called The Listening Room. I'm the host, Drew Didle, and I'm a medical doctor who is exploring alternative and holistic health. And I'm here today with TJ Finnerty, who I met through the Kennedy campaign, and he's here with Rich, who he knows through the 12-step recovery program. And so we're going to talk more about TJ's. We're going to hear about TJ's recovery story related to mental health and some of the perspectives he has to offer us. And so thanks for being here today, TJ, and thanks for being here, Rich. We were going to start by hearing a little bit more about Rich's experiences related to mental health. And so feel free to just introduce yourself, and you can take it from here, Rich, and I'll come on with.
Let me just introduce Rich real quick.
That's fine.
Hey,
Go for it,
12-step
TJ.
people. I'm TJ, and I've been a cannabis advocate for the last 7 years because my buddy Rich has actually let me sleep on his couch. And I gave up a permanent alimony award to share about that story on Joe Rogan to free our flowers and our fans from the financial strain of cannabis prohibition. Thank God for Rich. I'd be on the streets. So I hope we get a lot of tips and chips thrown into the hat, because I want to carry the message all the way to Elon Musk that cannabis reform leads to a green energy workforce and cures addiction. But Richie here, he doesn't use cannabis because it freaks him out, but he's going to share a little bit of the story on how I've used it to great effect. And then I'm not full of crap. I did really lose 112 pounds working for a billionaire he referred me to. And it got a heck of a story. So he's here to be the straight face, and so everybody knows I'm not full of crap. So this is Limo Rich, and you probably know him from the Baskin Ridge, Burnersville, Summit, New Jersey area. And we're reaching out to the 12-step community to protect Bobby K so he can trust God again and clean house and help others. So I'll shut up now, and Rich is going to talk about how he did use it for primal therapy, but he doesn't want to use it now. And I do understand the trepidation that the rooms have. So I'm here to try to help people. But go ahead, Rich.
Okay, I remember the first time I smoked pot, I got paranoid as hell. I thought I was going crazy. Okay, fast forward. So I didn't really, when they used to pass a joint around, I used to pretend I was inhaling. But I went through primal therapy, which was a big therapy in the 70s. And it consisted of 3 weeks of seeing a shrink, or a primal therapist, I'll call him, and 5 days a week. And for the first 2 days, I went to see the primal therapist. I wasn't getting anywhere. I couldn't. The sessions were about 3 hours a day, and it wasn't working for me. So I decided to smoke pot before I went to see the primal therapist on the 3rd day. And primal therapy, they try to get you to go back to your earliest childhood to try to come up with the things that made you scared, things that were bad happened to you. And I couldn't remember any of this stuff, but when I smoked pot, it used to come out. And the first 2 times I went to the primal therapist, I was just, you lay down and talk to the guy. That's the way they did it. You lay down, you're on a couch or whatever, talking to the guy. And I couldn't get anything out really. But the 3rd day after I smoked pot, before I went to this session, all kinds of things that happened to me when I was a kid that I didn't remember, all of a sudden popped into my head. Something about pot for me makes me remember things from the past, and the painful things from the past. And that's exactly what primal therapy wants to deal with. And so I had amazing results from smoking pot and going to primal therapy. And I did that for 3 weeks. But after, pot made me paranoid, which is good if you're going to a primal therapist, But if you're not, for me, um, I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it, and it didn't serve any purpose for me. So I don't smoke pot, point blank, right now. Um, and that's pretty much.
Yeah, Rich,
Uh,
do you want to say more about how the therapist that you were working with, what his opinion on you using pot before the session, what he thought about
well,
that?
well, at the third session where I smoked pot, I told him that I smoked pot. He goes, "I don't want you doing that." But after that session, he didn't say anything about it anymore. He saw what it did for me in this session, because I was just, my emotions were just coming out incredibly powerfully, and and so he didn't say not to do it anymore after that, and I did it with him, and I had great results from smoking pot. And the reason I smoked the pot to begin with was I had read about other people who went through primal therapy, and some of them smoked pot and they had great results. And I also had great results. So I believe it's good if you're going through therapy. But for me, excuse me, for me, if I'm not going through therapy, I don't enjoy it. I don't want to get paranoid. So I don't smoke pot anymore. Uh, and but it worked very well for primal therapy. I will say that. Um, but it doesn't work for me if I'm not going through therapy. So
Sure.
um,
He
That-
doesn't want to dig anymore. So the reason why I'm pro cannabis is it helps you do your personal inventory. It helps you uncover things. As they say in How It Works, there are those too with grave emotional or mental disorders, and they do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Right now, they can't be honest. They can't be honest with their trauma, and they can't be honest about using cannabis to share their traumas, and that's a shame.
yeah.
That's a shame.
are you
So
talking to me?
Yeah, yeah. You could use a little more
So
therapy.
I think some important context is obviously there's some degree of polarization on this issue, because cannabis or marijuana is illegal on a federal basis, but there are kind of state by state exemptions to that. I think there is maybe plenty of people in the audience who have personal experience with cannabis themselves and they can relate to what you're talking about. And there might be also people who, because of the law, they maybe have never experienced or for their own reasons, maybe that they've never had the experience of using that substance. And so it might sound a bit, confusing or mystifying to hear about, what that was like for you and the way that that opened you up. Do you think you could say more about how, what your experience was like that allowed you to go deeper into the therapy as a result of using that substance, for the people who might not be familiar with it themselves?
You talking to me or Tim?
To you, Rich, yeah.
Um, well, it made me have bad feelings, paranoid feelings. It made me remember things from the past that I didn't want to remember. But when you're going through therapy, that's the kind of stuff that really, when you get it out to a therapist, it clears up a lot of what's going on in your brain. And that's what happened with me. Uh, if I were going, I don't go through I haven't been to a therapist in a long time. I go to AA meetings.
For how long and how many meetings have you made?
I've been going to meetings since 1980. I've been to 22,000 meetings since then, 10 meetings a week for 43 years. And it comes to about over 22,000 meetings. And it's been incredibly helpful to me. It's helped my health, my wealth, and it put me in touch with God. Okay. Because in AA, we talk about God, uh, not a whole lot, but enough. Um, So it's been extremely helpful for me to go to AA meetings. And I still go to 10 meetings a week, which I started in 1980. And
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
I also love AA, by the way, and I think there are heroes in that room. And what I'm trying to share is that there is an easier, softer way. You don't have to do white knuckle sobriety. You can do white light awakenings. There's an opportunity here that if I can give the good, orderly directions that I learned with my experience and my training, hopefully we can rehab the rehab industry and we can produce a lot of good recovery. Not a lot of people are on my wavelength. I understand that. Rich doesn't really understand what I'm talking about, but I want to use AI along with AA principles to measure the gains and ills of using things like sacred plants that wake people up, but may give them an anxiety attack. So this is we need to work together on this.
Yeah. I was just going to share, as part of my medical school training in Omaha, Nebraska, I went to one AA meeting as part of my psychiatry rotation. And it really, like, I remember them serving coffee. I remember them going around, it was one day, an hour meeting or something, but it stuck with me. And then during
A
my
lot of cigarette
residency
smoke,
training,
a lot of cigarette smoke at the meeting, or
probably
yeah.
afterwards or something on the patio. And then in my residency training in Minneapolis, I went up to, I guess it was outside of Minneapolis, but it was the Hazelden Brady Ford Center for a week-long training.
Hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of things I admire about that model and that kind of intuitively makes sense to me. So coming back to you, Rich, I know part of their model is mentorship, or maybe they have a different term for that, but that you have
Sponsorship.
Sponsorship.
Oh,
sponsorship.
Yeah.
sponsorship. Right.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a better sponsor. I love my sponsor, but I need a
Upgrade.
rich one. I need a rich sponsor.
Yeah.
I'm
So Rich, do
She's
you want to
rich.
say anything more about what it's been like to sponsor others, or what you've seen,
He does
be
it all
involved
the
on that
time.
level?
A hobby. Mhm.
What it's like to sponsor others. I just tell them what happened to me, how I got sober, what I did. And what I did basically was we have 12 steps and a big book that we get the steps from. And what I did was I had a sponsor who took me through steps 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 12. And I did whatever he told me to do. We called it good orderly direction, God. They do that word a lot. God, God.
Mhm.
Group of drunks, God. Good orderly direction, gift of desperation, that they do that. And um it worked for me, and it keeps working for me. My health, my wealth, and my relationship with God, a higher power. I don't know how you feel about that part of it, the spiritual part of it.
He does more than that. He's driving people to meetings. He's listening to them all the time. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and I've been doing this for a long time too. So I got my 10,000 hours or more in this, and I think we need more of this kind of recovery. The reaching out to each other. I think the spiritual opportunity is right before us. Uh, I think the psychedelic renaissance may be the roots of religion coming back that have been ripped off. And I think this is a great time for opportunity. However,
Mm.
we are having a spiritual warfare over this. This is a spiritual fight. And I think Bobby is going to be leading it. I feel it in my bones.
Mm.
Yeah. So TJ, we're going to get to you in just a minute,
I'll
and
shut
just
up.
to respond
Finishing
briefly
my
to Rich, without going into
Let
too
the
much
commercials
detail,
off.
spirituality is a big part of my life.
Oh,
And it's kind of an ever evolving path, where I did grow up going to church with my mom and my brother, and then my brother bailed on the church at a certain point, and I did some singing in the choirs, and I could go into some details of some questioning and then exploration of Buddhism and the Bhagavad Gita and Eastern practices, and then kind of coming back around to understanding the story of Jesus, and how how the basic message of loving your enemy really feels like so compelling to me, as if we're all going to be in this together, you know, that's part of the message. And so, so I am drawn back to Christianity in my own spiritual path, but I do want to focus on you two today. And so, Rich, I wonder, is there anything you'd want to say to listeners about how they might get connected to an AA program, or is there anything else about your story you wanted to share before we move on to TJ?
Well, to get connected to an AA program, you go to an AA meeting. They're all over. I live in New Jersey, and there's just meetings all over. You can just look it up online, and there's plenty of meetings. I
And we don't promote, this is a program of attraction. We're not here to promote the program, and they're kind of giving me a little garbage right now. So I understand where they're coming from, but sooner or later they'll accept it. Yeah, but
well,
they're a wonderful group in our experience, is what I want to say. So
Okay, that's
well,
fine.
well, if you're an alcoholic, AA is the place to go, in my opinion. I was an alcoholic. I tried to stop drinking on my own for 5 years, was unable to do it. Then I had a friend, an old roommate, who was the worst alcoholic I knew. And he called me up and said that hadn't had a drink in 3 months. Do I want to go to a meeting with him? And I said, yeah. And I went to a meeting with him. And I didn't like the first meeting I went to. I thought it was a religious cult. But then he took me to another meeting and I felt more at home. And he was going to 10 meetings a week, and I just started following him to meetings, going to meetings with him. And I'm so glad I did, because it helped me out incredibly. And I always say this, my health, it helped, because my brother died at the age of 36 from drugs and alcohol. And I was following in his footsteps. And uh, and my sister also died. She was in her 50s when she died from esophageal hemorrhaging. My brother died from esophageal hemorrhaging. And when I got checked out by a doctor, he told me that I had old scar tissue, but it was all healed because I had been attending AA meetings. So that's my story with my health. And when it comes to wealth, I was spending a lot of money on drugs and alcohol. I stopped doing that and started saving money. And I have a lot of money. I've spent,
no, don't tell anybody how much money you get.
well, I've spent $22,000 to go to AA meetings over the past 40 years. It's $1 a meeting. Now they're raising it to $2 a meeting, but I only put $1 in because I'm an old timer. And so that's the wealth part of it. I've saved a whole lot of money. And then there's the spirituality. We talk about God in AA, and I was raised Catholic, and I thought God hated people and was going to send them to hell for mortal sins like eating meat on Friday and other horrendous things. Uh, uh, and AA, we talk about God as a loving friend. He's on our side. He's got our best wish, that's the way we believe in God in AA. I do anyway. So it completely changed me in 3 areas of my life: health, wealth, and spirituality.
Thank you, Rich.
I think that the hand of AA is reaching out now, and they need their green thumbs back.
That's a blue.
I know it's blue. It went blue. But America, this is the way to get over drugs. Right? God, G-O-D, garden over drugs.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Rich, I just wanted to thank you for being here with us today, and
Okay, now I
maybe
can
we
leave.
can transition into our man of the hour, TJ Finnerty. And maybe my first question, TJ, is if you wanted to say a little bit more about why it was
They probably leave, sir.
important to you to have Rich here with us today.
I think the reason why I have Rich here is because I want it for credibility. You can read my body language, you read my lips to say that I'm not full of crap. Because that's the first thing that they do when they attack you when you come out. They attack you for being insane or were full of garbage. I am not aligned with the cannabis industry at all. I'm here to top dog the cannabis industry, to put a muzzle on it, because right now market forces are exploiting patients as opposed to serving them, and that it abhors me. And I think we should be able to grow our own cannabis because it helps people with sleep, it helps people with anxiety, it helps people with depression, it helps people with pain. And we shouldn't be obliged to the government to be able to grow a garden variety plant. This is a freedom issue in America. And I am qualified, I believe, to even face Donald Trump, anybody on this issue, having escalated this before to the chairman of the board of IBM Corporation, Fair Oaks Hospital, Summit, New Jersey, was ripping off people. And I took them on. And thank Mia Savino's uncle, who was my psychiatrist, who stood up for me because they screwed me up with Risperdal, sent me home, produced a relapse, and I lost a marriage to that. A lovely lady I was married to at IBM. Because they disgraced me with a diagnosis that was incorrect. They said my cannabis use was a mood disorder, and it was a horrible experience. But they got me again when I got a DUI. After IBM downsized me, I started a small company called Crime Blasters to fight this stuff. But I fell into the
TJ,
trap.
we're gonna get more into your history in a
It's
minute.
scattered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
You should tell
but
me how you want me to do this before I.
yeah, no problem. You're doing great. So I just coming back to the question again about for you in telling your story today, do you want to say again about how having Rich here is helpful to you?
Well, first of all, I would be homeless if Richie didn't put me up. I'm on this Social Security. I gave up my permanent alimony award of 5,500 to brag about it on Joe Rogan. That psychiatry turned me into a wimp and a simp for my family. Instead of the protector and the provider and the hard driving CEO type that was trained at IBM to take on the world, I became disabled for my family, and I want to apologize to them. And I want an opportunity to go on the podcast circuit to reestablish my dignity and my recovery, maybe raise some funds to pay back my ex-wife all the alimony she had to pay me, and maybe to restore my daughter's faith in myself as her hero instead of the zero they turned me into 27 years ago. Doctors are quite uncomfortable with my trying to stand firm on this. The churches have been resisting me. My former employer did not appreciate the fact that I lost 112 pounds under his nose with cannabis when he was anti-cannabis. I'm being censored, and I'm scared, to be quite frank with you, because I can see the corruption, how deep it is. It's everybody's making money on cannabis right now because it's half legal, half not. Deals are being made behind the scenes. I've been surprised in my advocacy. I testified in front of John Fetterman, Patrick Kennedy, Steve Sweeney he was the president of New Jersey Senate. I sent him a letter requesting our green thumbs back, and they froze my bank account to teach me a lesson. So I think I'm a hero, and I think I deserve a promotion, and I'm asking for it. Are we going to trust God, or are we going to throw me under the white coat rug?
Yeah.
How would I do?
TJ, why don't you take us back to when you first got plugged in to the medical system and how they were diagnosing and treating your problems when you went there for help?
We'll talk about that. My father was a brain damaged alcoholic. He had 2 holes in his head. He was a violent carpenter drunk who beat my mother when I was even in her stomach. My mother was very depressed, so I didn't really attach well to her as well. She worked at Ciba-Geigy Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Ritalin, and they put me on Ritalin at the age of 5, and that helped save our mortgage. It's an ugly story, but they didn't think my high IQ was worthy of advanced placement. Plus, my mother was trying to manage my brother's addiction at the time at home. So New Providence High School thought I had 144 IQ, and they wanted to skip the 8th grade, send me to high school early. My mother said, now we have him on Ritalin to rein him in. And we just don't want to give him any more stress. And then a few months later, my brother shoots me with a 357 Magnum, having been addicted to Percocets at a young age while he was working himself to school at King's Supermarket. His hand got crushed in a conveyor belt, and the doctors and Summit just gave him hundreds of Percocets, and he was hooked. And I had to deal with a brother who was a half brother at 6'3" that was a bully, opioid addict. Ugly story. So I had to enter high school with a hole in my butt from a 357 Magnum. I had to tell the school kids I did myself. I was the butt of all jokes. Somebody like Joe Rogan, who was a black belt in karate, beat the shit out of me just for fun. He's gonna laugh because he's my sponsor. That's what happens when you do your inventory with your sponsor. They just laugh at you. Right. But it's okay. I mean, I'm through a lot of this trauma. I want to try to help people realize that cannabis is good for coming over trauma.
Yeah.
So
let me just
share that gunshot story of getting me on Joe Rogan.
Tell me again what age were you when you started on Ritalin? And then I guess we jumped forward to high school at age 5.
At age 5, they thought I was strange. I had too many things to say, chatty catty, too much energy. They go, shut up, here's some Ritalin. And my mother was like, oh, well, we're going to put you on a study. And Rutgers is going to do a study on you because you're gifted. And so Rutgers did a bunch of tests on me from the age of 5 to the age of 15. And I was quite the guinea pig. Yeah. I'm going to take my dentures out on Joe Rogan to make a point that my tongue is very sharp because, doctors were telling me, oh, that tooth decay has nothing to do with Ritalin. But guess what? They're jacking your kids up on speed, the same stuff Hitler was on. And Elon Musk says amphetamines are an anger amplifier, and they are. If you want an angry kid that is being emotionally repressed, put them on Ritalin. Don't put them on Ritalin, please. It's just get them some exercise, get them a real school system that can nurture their mind. You're just wasting the workforce at a very early age. So yeah, my story with Ritalin is replete. I mean, I hope some strange woman wants to date me when I pull out my dentures on Joe Rogan, but I doubt that'll happen. But that's kind of comedy stuff that'll get out there.
Right. So I just want to come back. You're saying about some of the negative experiences that you had with Ritalin and that you maybe read about or heard about.
They taught me at a very young age that there was something wrong with me. They taught me at a young age I was unacceptable. They taught me at a young age that I had a biological predisposition to being screwed up. And that's what they're teaching you.
Yeah. And what age was it that you stopped taking Ritalin?
Oh, when I started using cannabis, that was in 2014.
Okay.
When a psychiatrist at Overlook Hospital, Robert Karp, died of colon cancer. God decided, I guess he was an asshole, so they killed him. And then I went to another psychiatrist who said, hey, your trauma from home, your childhood trauma is probably PTSD. You've been misdiagnosed to death with bipolar, schizophrenia, ADHD, panic disorder, all these disorders. You were abused as a kid. Did you ever think about trying cannabis? So I did. And when I tried it, I got very much in touch with the fact that I was screwed over because I was also a grad student at Seton Hall University and I had the highest grade point average because I'm a buff in psychology at Seton Hall. And I started to realize this was a whole machine here. This is like the McDonald's of mental health. These people aren't really listening to me. They're not sensitive to the fact of the trauma in my family, the codependency in my family. My brother was an addict. My mother was an addict. My father was an alcoholic. My sister was an addict. My ex-wife, I think she drinks too much and is quite negative. I couldn't please her at all, but she was a high-powered Wall Street exec. And who am I, Mr. Disabled, to challenge her on her drinking? So I got kicked out of that marriage. So it's been pretty, I decided to get off Ritalin when I was using medical cannabis because it worked better. Because if you use a strain like, let's say, green crack, which is a heavy sativa, It actually helps you harness your energy if you use it in a minimum effective dose. But don't be blowing your head off all day with it.
Okay, so I'm hearing that in 2014 you were working with a therapist that what did you say they were they prescribing
I
it or were
doc,
they endorsing
doc,
it?
Dr. Clark died of colon cancer, which left me with no doctor. And then my ex-wife was also attacking me in the divorce courts. Everything just hit the fan. So I found another psychiatrist that would give me medical marijuana because I saw in Joe Rogan on how cannabis was helping people. So I sought out a psychiatrist. I had to pay $400 for him to bless me with a cannabis card in New Jersey based on PTSD.
Okay.
And I became one of the suckers in the patient population that had to declare to the world that I had a mental disorder, get a card, and then be overcharged for cannabis. And then I took it and ran with it because I'm a highly trained counselor as well.
Okay, so I'm piecing together that it was 2014 when you were diagnosed with PTSD, is that right, for the first
That's
time?
correct. That's
And
correct.
then started using medical marijuana by prescription
Yes.
as sort of a different trajectory than what you had previously been experiencing, which was polypharmacy or multiple drugs.
Polypharmacy. And at that point, the doctor had me on gabapentin, Seroquel, Wellbutrin, Prozac, Ambien, Vistarol, Concerta, 80 milligrams. Did I say Lamictal? Yeah.
So,
9 drugs. I was up to 333 pounds, and he was trying to tell me to go get stomach surgery to control my eating that was being inflated with the Seroquel. But when I tried the cannabis and I realized I was getting screwed, I actually had to do this myself. So what I did is I went into a protocol to come off one drug at a time. And very slowly, what I did is I increased my diet because I improved it vastly because the cannabis is a teacher plant. And I used it to improve my conscious contact with God, my gut, which is where I think a lot of our thoughts come from. And it taught me on how to come off the Seroquel first, then come off the antidepressants, which are aggravating me. Then definitely I came off the ADHD meds, and I had to do this under duress. They were cutting my therapy. They wouldn't even see me anymore. Therapists wouldn't talk to me because I was using cannabis. They were saying, we can't talk to you. Doctors wouldn't talk to me. The only doctor that would talk to me is the guy who's paying $400 to give me access to cannabis. He didn't teach me how to use cannabis. So what I did is I did it myself. Thank
okay,
God for training.
yeah. And yeah, kind of in this pioneering way, you followed maybe your intuitive guidance and were there any
How
times
to handle
where
situations which used to baffle me. Exactly. That's exactly what we want to learn in AA. That I intuitively know how to handle situations used to baffle me, which is what I'm doing right now.
yeah. And so you were attending AA at that point in
Yeah,
2014?
yeah. I want to go back, but they're trying to burn me at the stake right now. I'm standing up and sharing the story. I lost 180 pounds. I'm off all meds. I'm just using cannabis. No, you can't say it's good.
Oh,
Help.
okay. Because AA, they take a hard line towards sobriety that does, they
Yeah,
include,
but that's not the AA way. That's an NA way. That AA is freedom of alcohol. That's what Bill
okay,
W. wrote, and he'll agree with that. They're all drinking coffee, eating scones and donuts, and they're doing other things, and they don't even challenge the gambling. They don't challenge the other stuff. I've been part of 12-step recovery, like psychedelics in recovery. They're online, and they're
okay,
challenging all their addictions with cannabis and psychedelics because it does improve your conscious contact with God, and we're tripping over other first steps too, like sugar, carbohydrates, no community, no going to the gym. I mean, all these things are things you need to do to improve your performance. And I think there's too much white knuckling going on. And I think a lot of people can just do better, especially the people that have suffered trauma. The ones, the room's kind of split between I'm what they call a vulnerable narcissist, getting better, my ex-wife, we would call it a little bit stronger one, the vicious side, or the controlling type. And I think the rooms are split that way too. The controlling types don't want to improve conscious contact with God. They want to believe in their pride. And I'm talking that when we pulled the plants out, we eased God out, ego. And that's what's going on with the human race right now, is we've lost our spiritual center, because I think the roots of religion have been ripped off, by the people that want to rule us. And thank God for someone like Bobby Kennedy right now, because I don't know. I just feel the stars are lining up on this. That's what Grace X is all about. It looks like crap right now because I don't have the support to get it up. But I have a feeling that God put me in this role for a good reason. I hate addiction more than anybody you can imagine. My whole family died of it. I've lost my ex-wife and my daughter to it. I've lost everything. And I sold off all my assets to give it to my ex-wife and my daughter. And then I came out for cannabis reform because I want to change this now. I want to end cannabis codependency. This is garbage. This is America needs to be free. This is the number one divide in America. It's promoted racial unrest, discrimination. It's ruined our conscious contact with God, because there's a chemical side of it. It's not just the word of God. It's the weed. I mean, you got to get on your knees to find God. And unfortunately, I think the bad people, they knew damn well what they were doing when they prohibited cannabis and psychedelics. They knew it, because it does lead to disorder, because it leads to God's order, not their orders. So, hey, I don't know all the answers, but I'd love to try to figure those out with everybody.
Right.
And I haven't.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting pieces to put together here. And
Yeah.
again, the context is cannabis and other psychedelics for a long time have been prohibited. And I think we might be at a time where that is changing, with presidential candidates like Bobby Kennedy, who seems to be in favor of legalization. And I think, just from my read on the culture, that popular opinion polls seem to be that the political needle has shifted more and more in favor all the time. And so one of the things you suggested is that when those decisions are made to prohibit cannabis and psychedelics, that in some ways maybe impacted individuals' ability to connect with God, is the way you said that, and you connected God to connecting to the gut.
That's why I call it grace X, because we've been crossed on God's grace with cannabis reform. It's a Christian kind of thing. I think we've been crossed with God's will. God willfully planted that plant. Who are we to pull it up? Who are we? How do you know it's not guiding the consciousness of the planet? How do you know? And you might be a winner because you did this while you're living, but you're not going to do so well in the afterlife, I don't think. I do think the plants propel all life on Earth. And I'm a scientist as well. I don't believe in free will. It doesn't work on the physics level, nor does it work on the religious level. It's all God's will, or physics, or whatever you want to call it. It's all fungi world. Who knows? How do you know the fungi are digesting all chemistry coming out of our bodies and keeping track of every thought we have and every sin that we care? How do you know heaven's not at our feet? Because we're just flying around in space. We're a speck in space. We're not that important. So my challenge is, let's green up the planet so we don't have to rush to Mars. So let's clean up planet Earth. Let's make Earth great again. Let's just let freedom reign. This is like a Martin Luther King. This is how people get shot. This is why Robert F. Kennedy got shot. This is why John F. Kennedy got shot, because the good guys are fighting for God. And I honestly believe that we're here to serve God. And I think we all should, very carefully, because the apocalypse is the other side of this. And it's all coming to a head now with AI. We're looking forward to the biggest downsizing ever to happen coming soon.
Yeah.
And there's an easy way to do the Great Reset, or there's a grisly way to do it. And let's do it the grace way instead of the grief way.
Yeah.
My
So
pitch.
TJ, I think some people listening might have a hard time
Understanding me.
following us here as we're talking about, the legalization of things like cannabis and psychedelics, and also this, kind of battle between good and evil, so to speak. Um, and so I wonder if we can come back to um,
I just want to say, go flower yourself. If you're a prohibitionist, go flower yourself. Like, yeah, instead of go F yourself. Yeah,
right.
Elon, go flower yourself. This just, you can't trump this with intellect. You have to use passion, inspiration to do this.
Yeah.
This is not gonna fly because everyone's going to analyze and make money analyzing. And how about a little freedom? And then we'll start analyzing. We're a first step here. We're powerless over prohibition. Our lives have become unmanageable. Let's use the steps to get off the addiction of prohibition, because all it's doing is making everybody perform poorly. Let's challenge Big Pharma to embrace this and actually heal the workforce, because we need to build a new society. Let's do it. I
Yeah.
know it's scary to the pocketbook for the physicians, but too bad. I mean, you've been taking advantage of prohibition for too long. It can help people get over epilepsy. It's helping, and no one wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it. That's
So
enough of this.
I think
Mass
that
medication
maybe is
there.
an important inroad on the connection between how the prohibition of cannabis and psychedelics had the relationship between that and the medical model that we have now, which leads to so many pharmaceutical drugs being used.
My complaint is that these polypharmaceuticals, these oil-based pharmaceuticals, have cut off our conscious contact with God in many ways. I think when you have somebody on antidepressants, they're less responsive. They actually don't speak up for themselves. It just makes it worse. People who suffer from depression are often suffering from oppression of some sort. They're suffering from poverty, they're suffering from being abused, and they're suffering from not processing those feelings. Rich doesn't want to remember all his feelings. And a lot of people in AA are like that. They're stuffing themselves with donuts, not wanting to accept what their gut's telling them. I found, especially with cannabis edibles, that when I meditate, it helps me clear out my weaknesses. And I became a total wimp on psychiatric drugs. I lost all my drive, my type A personality. So this is an opportunity for me to admit that I was a complete wuss, a subby hubby, that somebody who's collecting alimony off somebody that is functioning quite well with wine, and I can't. That's a damn shame, and I want to
Okay.
change that for America.
Yeah, let me see if I reflect this right. So it was through some of your inner work in meditation on cannabis that you begin to understand what the real effect was on you from the medications that you'd been taking for years.
They cut me off from my sex drive. They cut me off from my hard drive, my type A personality. Yeah, I'm an ENFP type A Aries, hardcore hard driving guy that used to work at IBM New York City, commute to New Brunswick at night to get my graduate degree at the same time. I used to work 100 hours a week, and I'm a hard driver type. That's typical of a kid that grew up in the kind of environment I grew up in.
And so that hard driving type, working 100 hours a week, was that when you were on the psychiatric medications?
Now that's before the IBM sent me to rehab. And then IBM sent me to rehab. The rehab put me on for alcohol.
Because
And
you were dealing with you were using alcohol to kind
I
of
was
cope
using
with that
alcohol
life.
to slow down at night. Yeah, because you get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to New York City and then go to grad school at night, and you come home at 10 o'clock at night and you need to get to sleep to get up at 4:30 again. I used to hit the sauce, and my it led to alcoholism. Maybe it didn't work out too good for me. So my family escalated me, and IBM threw me in Fair Oaks. And Fair Oaks also complained about my cannabis use at the time. It
Okay,
led
so
to me losing.
what year are we talking here when,
Talking 1986.
okay, so 86. And
Eighty-six,
you'd been on
87.
At that point you'd been on Ritalin
My
since,
whole life, yeah.
yeah.
Now, Dr. Servino, Mia Servino's uncle, God bless his soul, he's a great doctor. He diagnosed me with panic disorder and had me on a very light antidepressant and Librium when I needed it. But something happened around 1980. In the rehab, they tried to give you everything. They give you a hardcore diagnosis. And he stood up for me and we took them on. But I fell into the trap again when I had another DUI and I had to turn it over and trust other people. So unfortunately, yeah, I fell into the pill trap again later.
Okay, so just
They're persistent as hell.
helping clarify, so you had
In
been on
80s,
Ritalin, you were using alcohol. Were you on any other drugs at that point before this intervention?
I think I was on Librium as needed before I went to rehab. Ritalin and I think at that time it was one antidepressant I was on. I'm trying to remember what it was back then. I forget the name of it. It was like a Prozac.
Yeah, and it sounds like as part of the rehab, you were seeing a psychiatrist who, at some point, you were,
Dr. Servino, I was seeing him before I went to rehab.
okay,
The rehab got a hold of me, screwed me up. And when I got fired by IBM because the rehab threw me under the bus, I went back to Dr. Servino, who helped write a letter stating that their prescriptions were inappropriate. They had me on Risperidol or something. And they got me all freaked out on that. I was freaked out on that when I went home and I had a heck of a time. So that's how we closed down the rehab. But yeah, some years later, I ended up with another DUI psychiatric forced treatment, and that led to more problems. But yeah, I was on the Ritalin at the time. I was a little kid, so I had problems sleeping. And then he gave me sleep aids, and then
yeah, so sleep aids. And do you remember kind of the history of that led to the Risperidone
they
prescription?
wanted to
that was
give
the
me a
diagnosis?
non-addictive sleep aid, was how they were calling it.
They're calling it a sleep aid. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to use this as a not yet this Risperidol. These antipsychotics are very good now. They're not going to give you too many problems, but they actually gave me the same kind of vocal problem I had, Robert F. Kennedy had. I was acting quite weird in that stuff, and my ex-wife freaked out. So it led to relapse. It was a psychiatric relapse, though. It wasn't a drunken relapse. And that's the truth. They took me off the Librium too early, put me on that, sent me home. And then they tried to get me into a referral program afterwards to make money, which is what Dr. Servino said. It was shady. So, and IBM CEO agreed. So they rehired me, put me back in headquarters.
So you're
I
describing,
had to agree to medication to
yeah,
stay
you're
at
describing being in a treatment program that wasn't helping you, but was being maybe run for profit. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, they would just bust us all to an AA meeting and then call that therapy. All they really did was show you the 12 steps, take you to a few AA meetings, and then drug you up. And they did not really listen to anybody. They had no interest in your trauma. Or they actually thought it was bad that we were thinking about our feelings. You got to get over it. You're too sensitive.
Okay. And so this treatment program was that, did you say California or
Fair Oaks Hospital, Summit, New Jersey? A lot of
New
famous people
Jersey?
went there. Yeah, a lot of famous people went there.
Okay.
Mackenzie.
Okay. And did it close?
Yes,
And
they closed them.
do you
But
know more
they reopened the Summit Hospital now. So, I mean, but the owners had to admit to kickbacks because of me.
Okay.
I'm pretty proud of that.
I think maybe that's where part of the story that we're looking for is. So tell us more
That's
about
my history. Yeah,
what,
I am the guy that screwed them up. Yeah.
Okay, and so what was that process like? Did you work with a
It
lawyer?
was hell. It was complete hell. IBM fires me. And because I had very good customer relation skills with, and I want to nod him off, the president of Saturn Business Systems hired me immediately. So I was able to continue work and also advocate for my being discharged inappropriately by the rehab. So it was an 8-month process. I escalated them to the chairman of the board's office, and I worked with the chief counsel of IBM. And we did an investigation based off my whistleblowing. And they turned it over to the Attorney General, Janet Reno, who went after the rehab. And it was a whole ring of rehabs doing the same thing. And it, unfortunately, the rehab industry makes more money off relapses than they do in curing people. And that's just, commerce. A patient cured, a customer lost. That's not good for business in America. So I'm trying to do it again, escalate it to the chairman of the board of America, who I think is Bobby Kennedy and Elon Musk, because Joe Biden's acting like Judas Joe. He promised cannabis reform and he's forgotten about it. I understand that cannabis is good for dementia. So I suggest Joe Biden try some. He won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same guy that escalated that rehab. So I'm trying to escalate cannabis prohibition because it's crazy. It's just nuts. You're framing people as being ill because you pulled the plant out of the ground and then you say they're all nuts for using cannabis. That's crazy. So let's just change the definition of what a relapse is. That if people are using cannabis, they're depending on God because God planted it. The only reason why it's a problem is it's illegal. And I think the comedy community is the perfect community to challenge this. And I challenge them to raise funds for Bobby K. Also, you could protect me. Maybe I can come hang out in your home in Jersey somewhere, roll you some joints, because the other billionaire wasn't very happy that I did it. I'm sick of the way the white coats are treating me. Are we going to? Is the revolution against the white coats or the red coats? I mean, now the white coats are the people that we're worried about. Come on, guys, give up the flowers. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say your number one issue is getting cannabis
I
legalized?
can't afford it.
Yeah.
They want $500 an ounce, and they won't keep the strains that I want in there. They keep switching them. It's the system is set up to screw the cannabis industry and make them look bad. They're set up to make them maximize profits on patients. They won't tax them properly. They won't let them produce a product that actually improves performance. A business's job is to make 80% profits based on 20% of their population, which means you want to exploit them. You want to turn them into addicts. I don't want them to be addicts. I don't want people to be hooked on cannabis because they're trying to blow their head off with high-powered cannabis when they don't have to. They need to use it like Joe Rogan uses it, like I use it, to use it with discipline, to be careful, to use your senses, to smell it. Don't smoke it necessarily. Use it as an edible. Use it just like it's a medicine. Use it properly and use the minimum effective response. Because I am smart, I drove myself to Colorado and I picked up some magic beans. And then I came back and I did grow in a grow tent illegally. And I made a year's supply of the perfect strain to help me lose the 180 pounds. Is how I honestly did it. Because I knew when I went into the program, I was getting screwed. So my intuition said, drive to Colorado and come back with magic beans. And that's what I did. And I think everybody in America should be able to be self-reliant and to grow their own cannabis. And we don't need to be making a lot of taxes on this plant when our addiction crisis is being driven by the pill industry, not this plant. We're just shifting blame. And that's what addicts do. They shift blame. And big pharma's addicted to us. Unfortunately, now we need a workforce that's green and clean. And you're either going to have to pay the employee more so they can afford high-priced flowers, which are way overpriced. And these customers are being misled in the dispensary by these bud tenders that don't know what the hell they're talking about. we need AI assisted technology to help people measure the gains and ills of cannabis so that people can zero in that they're best and maybe improve their exercise level, their diet level, their spiritual level. And we need to stop kicking people out of churches and AA meetings for using a spiritual substance that God grew. So this is spiritual warfare
Yeah. So
at its
one thing I wanted to point out, is that you were, compelled to access the marijuana by going to Colorado, and I'm not advocating anyone breaking the law by
no,
crossing
let's
state
not. No,
boundaries.
let's
Um,
not do spiritual disobedience and grow cannabis at home. But yeah, I don't want to get swatted either.
Yeah,
Because
but
that's
what I, what I do want to focus on is for, is what you understand and what you can share about, what it might look like if the law were changed and people were able to access cannabis legally. I think you have some insights on what that might look like, which might be an important message for people who right now are in the dark or who might, not have that personal experience. And so I think you can shed some light on that topic, maybe for people like that.
yeah. I think it's very important that the community embraces nature, and that we stop rejecting this precious natural resource. It's been maligned. Uh, when you're using cannabis, you want to be using very specific strains for your condition. And the market doesn't necessarily want you to do that. They rather have you miss the mark and keep coming back for more and more and more. So my point is the average American should be able to grow their own. In the first place, we got to stop sending police to enforce prices on a plant. All it does is it promotes a black market and a gray market. And it's just half a measure, as they say in AA. You're not going to get over the addiction. We want people to be free from the pain pills and from all this stuff. So people are going to need to be able to grow their own. And there's no reason why we can't have an industry that is giving prime products, because not everybody knows how to grow anyway. So I think the industry is just being bullshitted that we need no home grow. That's ridiculous. But unless society embraces it fully, and we don't do this half-ass thing, and we tax the plant, and we're trying to blame the opioid crisis on the plant, let's tax the pill people and then just free the flowers. And when the cannabis industry produces something that's worthy, like I have a vision of Amazon using their Halo AI assistant to track the pains and the gains and the ills of cannabis, so it can automatically reorder you the next strain that works better for your sleep, your activity level, and it listens to your voice, so it knows when you're stressed out and when you're not. So there's no reason why we can't have it like an Amazon Grace service or a GraceX service where we're using AI to be your bud tender, and then we get delivery. But people should be able to grow their own. And I think it's time to challenge the industry to stop being gatekeeper and to be service oriented, because IBM, you don't need a monopoly on cannabis. That's unreasonable.
Yeah. So TJ, I can tell you have a lot of creative ideas about, how to
They drove me nuts. That's
move
what happened.
things forward. And I'm curious, you've talked about interviewing on Joe Rogan, for example, but I'm curious about other like smaller next steps for you. How would you like
Sure.
to spread this message?
I'd like to get on anybody's podcast because I'm going to be trying to fertilize this up. Um, I've approached Lex Friedman. I've approached Russell Brand. I've approached Jordan Peterson, Tim Ferriss, Aubrey Marcus. I've sent over about a dozen emails to Jamal Holly, who's an aide to Robert F. Kennedy, has promised me that eventually I'll get through. I'm hoping that the Kennedy campaign picks up the phone and something happens. They don't have to endorse me. I'd like to be the spiritual sniper, so to speak, to get out there and to rile up the troops and challenge the recovery community to protect Bobby Kay, because obviously they're playing games in politics. And I want to reestablish trust in God. And I want to clean house and help others. And I'm a very talented man. I mean, I'm glad to be rolling joints for Jay-Z and maybe, I can get on one of those comedy shows and we can have some fun. I'll pull my teeth out and talk about Ritalin and show you how sharp tongue it is. Because you have to use things. By the way, I'm related to P.T. Barnum, the inventor of show business. So I'm going to ask for a little help. So I'm reaching out. I'm a 12-stepper. I'm standing up for freedom. If you think I should be destroyed, have me killed. That's fine. I'll go with God. You guys can burn in hell. I don't care.
All right. So I know,
But the
I
people
guess
that are
from,
resisting me don't know me very well.
yeah,
The
from,
people that are resisting my emails, they don't know me very well.
yeah, yeah. From my experience, whether you're a musician trying to get some attention on stage or, a YouTube person or even on social media, it can be difficult to get people's attention.
Oh,
And
they're all blowing me off so far. Yeah,
yeah, so, and
I'm
I
too weak.
know,
I'm too small.
our conversation now is part of a YouTube channel. I've done a few interviews. That have been viewed by a dozen people at most. I don't
That's
know
all.
that I don't know that there will be too many people that listen to this interview, but it's okay because I think the ones who do, um, you know,
Matter.
matter. And, I think if you kind of resonate with TJ's message, feel free to, interact with him, send him messages on Twitter or with myself, because I think part of the beauty of the Kennedy 24 campaign is that we can build up as a grassroots movement. And even two of us, even three of us, can start small projects and to build from there. And maybe it's a long trajectory between here and interviewing on Joe Rogan, but there are little steps that we can take along the way, as volunteers, as supporters, for, number one, the Kennedy campaign, but also these kinds of futuristic or idealistic plans for creating a better world together.
Yeah, I hope you send me a copy of this so I can make clips, put it up on my channel. I am at Job Hire at Twitter or X, JOBHIGAGR. I am supposed to be the job hire that promotes the workforce to green energy. So job hire, get it, higher performance. That's the joke. So that's, if the cannabis industry would like to sponsor me, that would be a shame that the Christians and the people that I've worked with so far don't sponsor me. But if the cannabis industry is the first people that are spiritual enough to sponsor me, that's fine. They're out to shame the rest of you, with the story. Because people are holding on to control because they're afraid. I get that, but we need to trust what God planned. So um, my I want to escalate this, and I want to be my daughter's hero. So I'm asking you, Robert F. Kennedy. I'm estranged from my daughter. My daughter needs a hero. She's depressed. I can't see my grandchild, and it's all because of cannabis corruption. I have detailed notes. I have documented this. I'd be glad to start screen sharing you some of these pictures. Should we do that a little bit? No, we're
Um,
running out of time. You should do another show maybe Wednesday
yeah,
or
what I was thinking is maybe to bring it to a close for now, and then we can also have a follow-up conversation.
okay.
So what I'll do is I'll hit the stop button on the recording, and we can stay on the line for a minute. But is there any last message you want to make before we end for today?
Well, I just want to show people what they can look like on medical marijuana. Hold on a second.
Okay, let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and pull those
Screen
up. I
share.
think I think what
Okay, you have to enable me.
yeah. Give me a moment here.
Sure, I'll find the right picture.
Okay. Mm. Okay, I think you're
I'm a
now
co-host.
co-host, so you can screen share.
All right,
Might be on the bottom.
I'm not sure which one it is. Here, can you see?
No.
No, not great. Um, I have to figure this out too.
No
Let's
problem.
see.
TJ, thanks for being here today. We'll go ahead and end the recording for now.